Hello everyone, welcome to another week of our Design for Impact challenge. And this week we'll be talking about the prototype and test steps of design thinking. So I hope that so far you've been enjoying the challenge and that currently you're working on your ideation videos. And if you need a little bit more time to make that video, just let your mentor know, just so that we can keep track of your progress and make sure you're on the right track. And this week will be a little bit lighter in the workload, so hopefully that should help you stay on track. And one note is that we do have a feedback form that is open for you to fill out anytime. And we especially would appreciate that you fill out the form sometime this week or in the next couple of weeks so that we have an idea of how the challenge is going for you and in what ways we can help you. So far we have gone through the empathize, define, and ideate steps of design thinking. So today we'll be going over the prototype and test steps. So prototyping is the process of discovering what works and what doesn't early and cheap so that you can spend time and money on solutions proven to work. We prototype so that we can rapidly and effectively gauge user interest in our product while also getting a reliable demo or sample of our product. If your prototype is immediately rejected, there's no point in iterating on it because it means that you probably did something wrong and your intended users, do not want this solution, and then you would have to go back to need finding, or maybe it's just the ideation step that could be improved, and maybe you need to think of some other ideas. So either way, prototyping is a nice way to get this kind of feedback quickly. And in startups, this is what they call fail early, fail often. So how exactly do we prototype? So the main idea here is that you should try using things that you already have because you don't want to build something from scratch or build something really complex that's going to take you a lot of time. And prototypes can be physical, which is what we're going to do for this challenge, but it could also be an experience prototype. Like in this example, we were we were testing whether an app where people can share their goals would work to help people get motivation to achieve their goals. So instead of actually building out the app and then trying it out, we just used an existing app like Messenger or iMessage to just see if a concept works. So yeah, that is an example of an experience prototype, but for the challenge, we'll be mostly focused on physical prototypes. And there's different levels of fidelity in prototyping. There's low fidelity, which is like a very basic bare bones version of your final product. There's medium fidelity, which is a little bit more complex and detailed, and high fidelity, which is much more detailed. And for each type of fidelity, the type of feedback that you get is pretty different. And we're going to talk more about that later. So, regarding lo-fi prototypes, these are very basic prototypes and are usually made out of paper sketches. Like you can take a piece of paper and draw a bunch of like rectangles on it, and then fill out what the solution would look like. Say it's an app, so you can like draw different screens of your app. And these are like real quick and easy to make so that you can iterate on your ideas quickly. And by that I mean, if say you want to make a change to your idea or to your app, then it's super easy and quick to do. And for lo-fi prototypes, like the way the user will interact with it is with your help, because of course you don't have like, like if it's like a piece of paper and your user is pretending to use the app, then you cannot really make their interactions work by themselves. So you can simulate it. So like for example, if a user presses on like a button, then you can show them the next screen that would appear when they actually press that button in the actual app. And here, so what you want to do is draw screens that allow the user to carry out the task flows of your key task. Just remember, when you did the ideation step, you thought out of your key task, and for each key task, you drew like a task flow. And the reason why you want to draw the screens of these task flows now is that you want the user to go through each screen as for each one of the task flows. So this is just an example of an app that me, Unji, and some of our friends were working on. And our task flow here was to allow a user to create a new goal. So what we did is that we drew 4 different screens. This one was just done on a tablet, but you're free to do it on paper. And each screen goes through one step of this task flow of creating a new goal. Like in the first screen, you can click on this button to add a goal. On the next screen, you can select what type of goal you want to achieve. And the next step is just what would show up on the screen after you select one of these, or like one activity that you want to do, and so on. And yeah, at the end of this process, the user would have created a goal, and we just wanted to simulate this like task flow on these lo-fi prototypes. This one is another example of a task flow. So here we want to allow the user to explore and to get inspired. So we created like a search page for our app where you can look at different users of the app. So you can select one of the users, and it would go to this user's profile. And on that profile, you can select another item to go and see specifically what are the goals of that user, so that you, the user, can get inspired. And yeah, and as you can see, like these task flows are like pretty straightforward, very simple, and they let the user carry out the key task of your app or your product. So medium-fi prototypes are a little bit more real and detailed than lo-fi prototypes, and they're usually built on design interface tools like Figma, which is what you're going to use in your final prototype of your idea. And this is an example of a medium-fi prototype. It is for the same app that me and my friends were designing. And as you can see here, there's a lot more detail, and the screens look like much neater, much nicer. There's a lot more thought about the colors, the different themes, the images, and what text would appear on these screens. And yeah, here are just like 4 different screens of our medium-fi prototype. And after you make these screens, so on a tool like Figma, you can link the different screens together. So like for example, if you click on this button here, it would go to the next screen, and then the user can do that on their own, so that they get a better sense of how they can interact with the app, which is something you can't really do with a lo-fi prototype yet. Great, so now that you've learned about prototyping and are ready to test out your lo-fi prototype, let's talk about testing. So testing is a way to get user feedback on your prototypes, so you can iterate on them, or you can iterate on your ideas and see whether your users actually think that your idea is helping solve their problem. So by getting this user feedback, you also gain an even better understanding of your users. Of course, we did that during the need finding step, but as the user will interact with this prototype, you'll get an even better understanding of what they need or what they want. And testing can also help you either reframe the problem or iterate on original ideas. So maybe the problem that you're solving is a slightly different from what you thought. On maybe it has some different flavors to it, or maybe you can iterate on some of your original ideas, like not exactly like start from scratch, but maybe just like change it a little bit to help solve a problem better. And so, how do you conduct a test? So, first, you need to select a couple of test users based on your target audience for your product. Second, during the actual test itself, you'll be showing the prototype to your user and you'll only give them the basic context that they need to understand what to do. Like, you shouldn't try to tell them too much on how they should do something or give them too much detailed information about how to use the app or the like just the product, because at the end of the day you want to see if a user is able to use it on their own, if it feels intuitive to them. And third, after showing the prototype to your user, you'll be asking your users to carry out the three key tasks of your product. And like I mentioned earlier, like for your prototype, you'll be making screens for these task flows of your three key tasks. And now you have to see whether the user is able to carry out the key task on their own. And yeah, so this is an example of how you would be conducting a test with a paper prototype. So as you can see, when the person touches on one of the buttons, you, the like like you can and this is an example of how to actually conduct a test. So when the test user like presses on a button, like in this example, you can then add like a different screen to show them what would appear in your product when they do this action. This is another way this can be done. Yeah, like you can like print like an overlay of an iPhone and just like go to the appropriate part of a screen when the user scrolls or when the user presses a button. Yeah, these are just examples, and usually, like another thing that you can do is like do A/B testing, so you can show them like two different screens and ask them which one they think is better. And here are some tips on how to conduct a test. The first one is to show, don't tell. Let the users experience your prototype. Like I mentioned earlier, try not to talk too much or to explain too much about your prototype, and instead just show it to your users and let them figure it out by themselves. Ask your users to talk through the experience, because when they do, you'll get a better sense of what are their thoughts and their internal understanding of your product. Next is to observe how they interact with a prototype. And here, make sure to observe how they interact correctly with a prototype, which would mean that it feels intuitive to your user, but also how they interact incorrectly, which means that maybe something is a little bit confusing and can be made clearer. At the end of a testing session, you can ask follow-up questions about their experience, about any specific um, details of your product that um, you want to get an idea of what your users felt about it. And yeah, so usually you would prepare these questions beforehand, and like before the so usually you would prepare these questions before the testing session, so that you can ask them at the end of your testing session. Another thing that is really important to do is to document critical incidents that happen during testing. These critical incidents can be positive and would tell you what you're doing well so far, but they can also be negative. And for the negative incidents, it's usually a good idea to assign a severity level, so that later you know what to prioritize on your final prototype. Finally, it's a good idea to write down any changes that you will make for the next or final iteration of a prototype and product. And this is usually just a follow up from documenting the critical incidents. Yeah, to elaborate a little bit more on what to do after the test. So, like I mentioned, you can document the critical incidents and assign a severity level to them. What you can also do is using a feedback capture matrix to record the feedback from your test user. And a feedback capture matrix is basically just like this, like four different quadrants. In the first one is what the user liked about the product. Second one is what the user wished they had from the product, like what sort of features or experiences or um, different, just like different things that the user wished there was that they were able to do on your prototype. And the third quadrant is like the questions that came up during the experience. And finally, the ideas is what are the next steps, or any ideas that you and the ideas quadrant is about all the different things that came up during the test session and that made you realize that, oh, maybe you can add this new feature, or maybe you can change this feature, or maybe you can make this the workflow experience a lot simpler. Yeah, so it's pretty much just like any type of ideas you gain from the testing session. And yeah, make sure to write down and draw any changes that you will make for the final iteration of a product or prototype. And when you test lo-fi prototypes, there's some kind of feedback you're looking for. Since the lo-fi prototypes are not very detailed, it's pretty hard for the user to um, be able to imagine what the final prototype would look like. But instead, what they can help you with is give you an idea of what they think about the overall concept and usefulness of a product. They can also give you feedback about the core functionality and flow, and maybe not so much about the visual design and aesthetics, since these are usually not very present in the lo-fi prototypes. And finally, but very important, is were the users able to carry out the task flows? And that's very important because it will give you an idea of how intuitive your product is and how easy it is for your users to carry out the key task that your product is offering. For medium 5 prototypes, the type of feedback that you look for is a little bit different. So you still try to get feedback on the core functionality of your app and on your task flows. And this time, it is pretty essential that the users can carry them out from start to finish on their own. Here, you can also get feedback on the visual design and aesthetics, like what the app or the product looks like. Or you can ask them about the different buttons or features, how intuitive or unintuitive they are to use. And you can also ask about what features seem to be lacking or unnecessary or even distracting, so that you can refine on the core features of your prototype. All right, so that's it for the prototyping and test steps of design thinking. And congratulations, you've finally gone through all the steps and are now equipped with all the tools that you need to build your product. So for this week, you'll be working on the lo-fi prototyping report. So what you'll want to do is first create a paper prototype of your final idea. Um, it should be at least 5 screens and can have a maximum of 10 screens. And what you want to do next is to gather a little bit of feedback on your prototype and iterate as needed. So you'll be interviewing 1 to 2 users and get some feedback on your lo-fi prototype, and this will help guide you towards your final prototype. And this report should be of about 1 page long. Feel free to include like pictures, notes, diagrams, pretty much anything. And since this is a little bit lighter, like it will be, and since it's a little bit mm. And since this report is a little bit lighter this week, since we just want you to draw like a simple prototype and gather a load of feedback, you'd be having 1 week to work on this. But as usual, feel free to take your time to work on this, and make sure to get feedback from your mentor as well. And yeah, let us know how we can help. And if there are any questions, feel free to ask on Ed or ask your mentor. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you the best of luck for this week. See you.